investigations that happened here. One was without cameras and one was with cameras. Looking at the UK case, because you followed that quite a bit, did you follow that from the get-go, or was it?
Yes, I didn't cover it. I found it while it was going on. I actually saw Nick Wallace live tweeting it, and so I started following that, and I became, just through that process, sort of integrated into the conversations that were going on. I remember the first thing that I ever said on Twitter about this case was that I had represented murderers that I liked more than Amber Heard. And that was, quite popular amongst a certain segment of Twitter.
Whoa, 1 second for a bit. Why did you make that comment, by the way? I actually want to know.
Because it was true.
What murderers were you working with that's a lot more likable than Amber Heard? Wow. After the UK judgment was handed down, this accuser alleged the smear campaign was paid from the petition in response to the audios. The smear campaign was so bad that a month later she was signed up to receive $25,000 for public appearances at DV conferences whatsoever. Big media publications were relentless in their pursuit of Depp after this victory, in as much that the focus was not really on all survivors, but specifically on survivors that were women. This was not the case with all publications, that has to be said. In 2020 and in 2022 respectively, the 2020 article by The Spectator actually did come to Depp's defense when the audios were actually released to the world via the Daily Mail. It must also be noted, as well as The Spectator, that Amanda de Cardinay, a Me Too activist and the first person to give her the platform that she had as an activist in 2016 under her brand known as Girl Gaze, and she was offering support to Amber Heard. However, once she heard the audios that was being released, she rescinded her support. She would no longer help her in the court process for the NGN lawsuit, done a complete U-turn. On top of this, every magazine have also been speaking in favor of Johnny Depp, but this doesn't of course represent the overall landscape of things, because the majority of them has been going against them, as shown in part 1 of this. The main focus from part 1 till now has been the UK case and how it matters. So let's go into the UK case. Let's look at that. Let's discuss it. What really happened in the UK case that is of so much interest that people need to take a look and disannul the verdict of 2022. Depp has always maintained that the audios were in place because they would argue she would become violent, and the tapes served as a reminder that so that she could hear herself and also remember what was said. However, his accuser boldly stated that this was because he would get drunk and high that he would forget, so they served as a reminder for him and not for her.
I know it might make people sound informed on this case to say that they know Amber was lying because they watched all 200 or whatever hours of this trial, but trials should never be used as a primary source.
We are in a labyrinth, not in a courtroom. We must remove all confines that is limited by the law. I am going to be using a reductive approach, also removing the falso in uno and falso in omnibus doctrine from my investigation and my analysis. So with that in mind, I'll be taking everyone's statement as truth. I'll be taking and then using the documentary evidence available, I'll be looking to see which one is more consistent with the evidence, and from there make a judgment call on what to take forward and what not to take forward, and hopefully craft a story that would make sense based on what is available, the data that's available. Please note that if something is inconsistent, whether it be inconsistent in one, if it does match up with other pieces of evidence, it shall be used. Unless it's really inconsistent and not really based in reality, very rare cases, you will see an entire piece of narrative or testimony being thrown out and an alternate is given to try and explain. But this will be done again only with documentary evidence, and it will be really extreme and really where the person is so unreliable and it is so inconsistent that nothing that they have said is corroborated at least more than once.
That's usually how
and
that
NGN did that.
works.
Right. NGN did compel in the California courts 2 of her witnesses
Interesting.
to testify. So no, the judge said, no, I'm not going to compel her to provide discovery. So what happened was, when they were going through the discovery, they found some texts that NGN claimed Johnny didn't turn over. Johnny claimed, I gave everything to my lawyers. Johnny had to have new lawyers at this point and said, look, we searched the keywords. I guess I can go through these documents by keywords, and these texts didn't come up. We followed the rules that were set between us and NGN. And the judge said, no, I don't believe you. I think you withheld this important evidence. And he dismissed the case in the UK. So they thought they'd get a chance to come back and fight. So they came back and they proved why Johnny should have his day in court.
Yep.
The judge agreed with one caveat. He could not follow sanctions against Amber Heard in Virginia.
Johnny could not sanction Amber for turning over all that confidential stuff.
All the confidential documents. So he was only allowed to go forward with the trial as long as he agreed not to file
You're going to
sanctions.
make that face a lot in regards to this judge.
Once. But before I actually do begin, I would like to extend my debt of gratitude to Angie of Depp Dive, who made the transcripts that I'm going to be using all available on deppdive.net. It was really valuable being able to see this. She made these documents available, and I'm so grateful for all the work that she has done to compile all the information, all the documents that I could even use to make this analysis. One thing about a smear campaign is the person that's enacting the campaign cannot actually bank on the third parties actually complying with the campaign or even being privy to the plans. We shall be exploring this idea in greater detail as we look at these incidents and show how they were repurposed, repackaged by an abuser to enact a smear campaign against their victim. So what I would be discounting are these particular 3 articles due to me deciding that I am looking at this case forensically. So I'll be removing the first article, which was an interview in 2017 post-divorce and pre-NGN lawsuit. In this particular interview, where the writer of Allure, who loves Amber Heard by her own admission, actually disclaims a story where it could offer a very real experience. This is Amber Heard talking. He says, turns out that decorative plastic trees are almost as flammable as their organic counterparts. I'm renting a place in Australia while filming Aquaman, and it has one of those trees, and my assistant was lighting candles. Pause. I like a lot of fire around me. The writer of the article interjected to actually write the following, saying, okay, reader, I know what you're thinking. Was she speaking literally or metaphorically? I don't know. Maybe I knew. I kind of had a hunch, but I couldn't tell for sure. He goes on to write in quotations, I smelled something burning, and the next second the whole house was full of black smoke. Heard clicks into superhero mode. I'm rushing into the kitchen. I'm soaking towels. I'm yelling at the people who are blowing on the fire and making it worse. There were little pools of molten plastic and had coagulated. Effectively, little bonfires under the tree. I managed to put out the fire quickly, but where I didn't notice, I hand my underneath a source of dripping plastic. I thought it was her ash and debris. I basically napalm myself. Then the story becomes a parable. You're getting too good to put out fires when you notice others' ineptitude. It started to cause me worry. Why am I so good at this? Perhaps not surprisingly, my friend's called Calamity. Her name is actually Calamity Jane when she travels. It is an interesting article because you don't know what is real and what is fake. You don't know how she's presenting the narrative. So if I was to take this article on board and say that this is how she talks, I could apply this to every single thing that we hear in the audios, and this article would be very indicative of those behaviors, of how she speaks, or of her speech patterns. Rather than me do that, I'm just going to let the evidence speak for itself, and I'm going to discount this completely because it is way too prejudicial and just way too frankly way too convenient. There's another article that was written in 2007 on a Robert Brink blog. Rob Brink blog is a blog that's still on and is still regularly updating. So this article really doesn't give me any reason to doubt it. It is something that looks legitimate. There were some interesting claims that were made by the blog that did perk my eyes up. She was asked a series of questions such as, "So you're now the hot girl?" She responds saying that she doesn't actually want to be pigeonholed into a look or a character. Now all I want to is escape that. There were also questions like what people don't know about her, and she says it was her bowling skills. And she was also asked what's the last lie that you've told, and she answered saying the last 45 minutes. Now this could be a joke. This could be taken anywhere. Like we've already read in the article, she has a very funny and quirky way of delivering things. However, this could be the truth, because a lot of the statements that I just read are grounded in truth. In fact, Johnny Depp actually said that this was what she was telling him.
Ms. Heard had come to me, and she was seemed to be seriously concerned about how she was being portrayed in Hollywood. She was concerned that because she had done films where there was kind of arbitrary nudity, and she had voiced to me that she didn't want to be looked upon that way in the industry. She wanted to be able to escape the chains of being objectified by the Hollywood system. She asked me, how can I avoid being stereotyped as the beautiful blonde who gets her breasts out or goes naked and has to shtuck people in movies.
So with that kind of information, this would directly refute it, but again, it's not the most reliable of sources. It was in 2007, and I have not seen an interview like that repeated, even with the accuracy of being in love with bowling, because we know that was something that she was supposed to go with Melanie Iglesias in the 15th of December incident. She was supposed to be there, but she didn't go because of the incident that she alleges happened. So when you look at all these facts and the fact that she said that she lied about all of that, you don't know whether she's lying about the same thing here. So it's articles like this that I've got to discount so that I can go into it without that prejudice and that bias, and present to you hopefully the most concise information that you've read. So with all that said, I believe I've chosen the right methods to wean out the bias in all of this. But regardless of who I am or the methods I've chosen, still do take everything that I say with a great big pinch of salt. Let's go into the first incident of violence, and we're gonna set the tone from there.
You remember the first time that he physically hit you?
Yes.
Please tell the jury about it.
It was it's seemingly so stupid, so insignificant. I will never forget it. It changed my life. I was sitting on the couch and we were talking. We were having a normal conversation, and he was drinking. I didn't realize at the time, but I think he was using cocaine, because it was like there was a jar of cocaine out on the table, an actual vintage jar.
That's an impressive amount of cocaine.
Not a
but
box
I didn't
of
see
cocaine.
him use it at the time, so I didn't really factor that in. We're sitting next to each other on the couch, and I asked him about the tattoo he has on his arm. And to me, it just looked like black marks. I didn't know what it said. It just looked like muddled, faded tattoo that was hard to read.
Are there any tattoos that you had that Miss Heard had an issue with, to your understanding?
A tattoo that I believe is up here, which used to say Winona Forever, who was a former girlfriend. And we'd been together for a few years. Winona Ryder, and
I said, what does it say? And he said it says wino. It says wino, and I didn't see that because it didn't look like it said that at all, and I laughed. It was that simple.
When we
Stranger
broke up,
Things season 4.
She's good in that, by the way.
how do you fix that?
He said, "You think it's so funny? You think it's funny, bitch? You think you're a funny bitch?"
She's narrating it.
I stopped laughing, but I didn't know what else to do.
I did go back and rewrite my journal to some degree. I took off the last 2 letters and had it say wino forever. Just because I thought it was again,
You could just say you thought it was funny.
through
It's funny, dude.
pain
Yeah.
comes
He's trying to be extremely careful what he
humor
says.
has to come in there at some point into the pain.
Second slap, I just stared at him because I didn't know what else to do. And he slaps me one more time. Hard. I lose my balance.
I thought you were sitting on the
next to each
couch.
other on the edge of the couch, or I was on the edge of the couch. It didn't hurt. It didn't physically hurt me. I was just sitting there on this carpet, looking at the dirty carpet, wondering how I wound up on this carpet. And before I know it, he
No, I also don't see
starts
tears.
crying. And like I had never seen an adult man cry. He's down on his knees and he grabs my hands and he's touching my hands and he's saying to me, "I will never do that again. I'm so sorry, baby. I put the fucker away. I thought I killed it and it's done. I thought I put the monster away and I've done it before. It's done." But on his knees, he seemed so sorry, but I knew I couldn't just forgive him because right? That means it will happen again, no? Like I've seen the health class videos, like everyone else.
Oh, that's way
And
too
I got
much.
up in my car.
You've
I walked
lost
to
me
the
with
car.
health class videos.
Mr. Depp, do you recall at the beginning of her opening, Ms. Heard's counsel mentioned that the first time you supposedly struck Ms. Heard was in response to a comment about one of your tattoos?
Yes, I remember.
And what is your response to that?
It didn't happen. As I said yesterday, I've never struck Miss Heard. I've never struck a woman in my life. I'm certainly not going to strike a woman if she decides to make fun of a tattoo that I have on my body. There was no incident of argument when the tattoo thing had been brought up many times, and I mean, there's really nothing I can do. I've always thought of my body as a journal. Why would I take such great offense to someone making fun of a tattoo?
Something so deeply
on my
personal.
Body?
Yeah.
That allegation never made any sense to me whatsoever.
I went to my therapist. I told her.
Objection, hearsay.
I went home and I, a few days
The
later.
jury doesn't know that yet.
Started getting, I actually don't know how many days later, but I started getting calls and texts from Johnny, apologizing.
I mean, some people respond
profusely.
badly, but-
Just that it would never happen again. Of course, it would never happen again. That he'd put this thing away. He killed the fucker is what he said to me over and over again. I put that fucker away. I killed that monster. I'll kill it again. It's done. I'll never lay a hand on you again. And I wanted to believe him.
If
So
his
I
monster
chose
was
to.
hitting women, I think we would have heard more about that.
She was very encouraging in me getting a tattoo of her name or whatever.
Sounds on brand.
I waited a while, and then I did it. I got a full tattoo of her, and it ironically wasn't long after that that everything started going sideways. I was doing anything I could to bring a smile to her face.
This is what they said in their witness statements in the UK case. There really isn't anything outside of what both parties have said, so it's going to be a bit difficult to navigate through that. Also, please note that for this particular incident, there was really no time specified. It was just said to be early 2013. The only inconsistent statement that I found with Amber's statement was when she said that she went to a therapist. We're going to address this because it is very important to note that Amber Heard, after the 10-day break, as alluded to in part 1.
When did you earlier
Did I
believe the
stutter?
first act of physical violence occurred?
Well, I had always believed up until recently that it started later, that the violence started around early 2013, not early 2012.
Oh, she just came up with new violence
You
now.
testified earlier that the first act of physical violence by Mr. Depp related to the Winona Wino tattoo. Do you recall that testimony?
It's not exactly what she said.
Okay. Is that...
We're going to get
Does
leading.
that change your testimony, realizing that this is earlier? Was this, in fact, still the first act?
Objection,
Yes,
leading.
it is leading.
What was the first act?
Objection, asked and answered.
Exactly. Ooh, get it, Camille. Today's going to be spicy, y'all.
How do you remember the first act of violence?
Well, you never forget it. That's how I remember it.
Yes, you did. You just said you
Changes
forgot
your
it.
life forever.
But you
never
literally
forget the
forgot
first
it.
time someone hits you like that.
Forgot the date, though.
I just had the date wrong.
They're trying to fix the dates.
So it throws a massive spanner into the works of how I'm going to be approaching this particular incident, how I'm going to be treating this new date in tandem with the other days. So when she said on day 15 that she went to the therapist and told her, which was objected to by Camille Vasquez, a closer inspection of the documents reveals that the first incident was actually recorded in January 2012, because we know that the disco bloodbath incident that was alleged was supposedly on March 8th, 2013. The issue is, when was the first incident of violence actually recorded? And she already gave her account in regards to this incident back in the UK case, and that was supposed to be for 2013. She does say that she did consult with a therapist. Because of this, for all of 2012, after consulting all of her notes as she outlined, and the only change being the date in the VA trial, you know, what was alleged should be there. This wasn't actually in any of the therapist note at all. There's no mention of a tattoo incident, let alone Wino Forever. I can forgive not being an explicit mention of a Wino tattoo or anything like that, but there's no mention of a particular tattoo incident that sparked this first incident of violence that she cannot seem to forget. 4 incidents of physical violence and sexual violence had been alleged from 2012 to 2014 in her therapist notes. This doesn't mean I'm of the belief that she went to a therapist for every single incident and just disclaimed it. I'm just going by the prompts that she gave on the oath. So looking at all those dates closely, the only date that does seem to cooperate is the 18th of January 2012, and it loosely, and I mean very, very loosely, corroborates the first incident outside of the fact that JD was drunk. We don't know what she meant by hit, so it is really up in the air outside JD was drunk. We don't know whether it was a tattoo incident that she was referring to here. If it was a tattoo incident, was it that significant that you couldn't report it to Bonnie Jacobs at the time, that he hit you because you just asked about a tattoo and it was so weird? Based on the he says, she did actually say that he was drinking. Page 178 highlights Miss Was, but the barrister for NGN had stated that the monster was his alter ego, someone that took over when he was drunk or under the influence. Depp denies this, but we must remember that lawyers would make this argument to set the case, whether this is a de facto or not is yet to be seen. That aside, due to Amber Heard using this as his apology and regretful nature, she just used this strategy in the US to characterize the monster being who he is. So because of how she uses it in the US trial juxtaposed to how the son used it in the UK trial, it seems pertinent to look into what the monster actually does mean to both of them and break down what could be seen from the evidence available.
What does the term monster mean to you?
Well, the term monster means to me, in the beginning, she had used a different word to explain the same thing, and she would use the word demons, that my demons were coming out, that she had noticed that there was a great change in my attitude or my aggressive nature, or she would say that the demons had come out and they had control of me and that sort of thing. I don't remember exactly how monster came out, but that word stuck and it stayed, well, until this day.
I remember there was communication with Johnny, both by phone and by text, where he was telling me that he was clean, that he was sober, he was clear mind, it wasn't the monster, and that he was so sorry.
September 26, 2015, right?
That is correct.
You write, "Monster is back. This is him." Did I read that right?
That is correct.
And then in the next message, you write, quote, "Ran away, first sign of trouble. This is not the man you promised you would be." Did I read that correctly? Ms. Heard, you're talking about Mr. Depp running away from you at the first sign of trouble, aren't you?
No, I'm recognizing the clues at this point when he would run away at the first sign of trouble. Often that was a clue for me to know that he was back using again and that we were about to enter the next phase of the cycle.
I mean, she had told me many times that the monster was only me when I was using drugs and alcohol.
And you describe his running away from you as the monster, right?
That wasn't what was a monster. The monster was the man who beat me up. The running away was just attached to that. It was a sign, a signal to me.
So he ran away or did he beat you?
As somebody trying to put together clues that we were entering into that phase.
In these messages, Ms. Heard,
Exactly.
monster isn't Mr. Depp doing drugs, is it?
It was always the man who did drugs and beat me up. Yes, that's always been the monster.
That's not what you're saying in these messages.
That is exactly what I'm saying in the messages.
I'm looking at them.
Violent, do you?
What is happening?
I do not describe that in this text
Gaslighting is
message,
happening.
So it's a cowardly monster this time.
No.
And going down the page, you write a long series of text messages to Mr. Depp.
Even when I was stone cold sober off of alcohol and substances aside from my meds, the term the monster was still there.
Who was the real monster in this relationship, Ms. Heard?
Lives in Johnny, half of Johnny. It's not all of Johnny. The other half of him is wonderful and beautiful and the man I love.
I'd like you to take a look at Plaintiff's Exhibit 120F.
Read
You start
'em.
off again by trying to get Mr. Depp's attention, right? You write, "Please come home."
I was trying to stop another bender.
You write, "Please come home," right?
That is correct. I was trying to stop him from using.
You were texting him incessantly. Isn't that correct, Ms. Heard?
It was imperative for my life.
Ms.
It was
Heard,
very
my
important
question is
to me.
much more simple. You were texting him incessantly.
I would
Yes
try
or no?
everything to
Ms.
get a hold
Heard?
of him and
So
to
that's a
stop the
yes.
cycle.
When she accused me of being high on cocaine or drinking like I was some kind of 19th century sailor, it's that was the word she clung to describe, but It was in her mind, not mine.
The monster was not the guy who needed space. The
Not
monster
for
was
doing
who he
drugs.
was when he came back.
And here are all the times that Depp uses the term monster. So it begins with a message that was sent on the 31st of October 2013 and shows that this is what Amber Heard calls him when he uses drugs. He says, thanks, she thinks that my Peruvian period has made me a monster and that I am ruining the relationship. Now, this single text by Mr. Depp to Stephen Deuters was preceded and succeeded by other texts by both men, giving some context for this conflict. Messages read in context says that Amber is extremely upset and we are dying. Him and Deuters go back and forth, with Deuters replying saying, yes, I will, in response, to speak with Amber Heard and give some perspective on Depp's character, because this was still very relatively new into the relationship. Most likely the above context wasn't allowed in the US VA trial, perhaps due to hearsay.
Well, in general, the rules of evidence are supposed to support the reliability of the evidence that the jury's going to hear. So if it's a piece of physical evidence or a photograph, you have to authenticate it. You can't just throw it up there. You have to establish the basis for it. And for witness testimony, the law prefers greatly live testimony in court to the matters being discussed and not things that are outside of court. So that's this whole hearsay thing is a statement made by somebody outside this current hearing that somebody wants to introduce for the truth of it. That's your basic hearsay definition. Now, some things are excluded from that, and there are lots of exceptions. And like this example you just gave us, say therapist notes. Mm-hmm. Well, there's an exception to hearsay for what somebody says in trying to get a medical diagnosis or treatment, because in theory, the law says, well, somebody's not going to be lying to their doctor when they're trying to get help from their doctor. So that can be an exception unless it's shown that they were really just trying to manipulate this to create trial evidence.
A lot of the rules were relaxed in terms of hearsay and all of that. So he did get to see a lot of the communication.
Hearsay is admissible in English civil proceedings. Yeah. You know, we just have a general hearsay can go in, whereas Americans go, hearsay can never go in except in one of these 27 different occasions.
So do put a pin on this as we will return to this particular incident. I hope that this explanation does for you to understand why some of these messages were not accepted into the VA trial, but some were accepted into the UK trial. The next message referencing the monster is a text message saying, I am going to quite gracefully glide into a massage of my broken back and neck. I shall exit one house. A monster shall we swallow and each, or perhaps it's MDMA. It shows that Depp was using the word in suggestion of doing drugs to alleviate pain and stress, as he relayed to his friend Bruce Witkin in an email in 2013. And this was also, funny enough, around the time of the trip to Hicksville, but we're gonna get into that much later. Now, the main reason why I say that this was used to alleviate pain was the colorful hyperbolic nature of it, because after all, Depp saying he is gliding gracefully with a broken back into a calming massage. I mean, neither of these things can be taken literal and should not really be taken literal, because Depp doesn't have a broken back within this timeline, not that I could see, or from any medical records that was presented to show a broken back. So it is reasonable to infer that this is hyperbolic. Now, it will become very pertinent when we go through the extensive timeline to show what this could mean. Nonetheless, it's just simply Depp stating he will become a monster after his massage. It's not speaking of his use of ecstasy, as it could be simply referring to his physical state. It's not necessarily saying that he's going to take these drugs. So the next message goes on to read, thank you, my dear Jerry. Very, very kind, mate. We have been perfect. All I had to do was send the monster away and lock him up. We have been happier than ever. Love you, brother, JD. Now, it must be noted that Jerry does say in this context that him and Amber seem a lot more happier. So there is really no reference here to there being drug use or anything like that. But when we look on the evidence that was available around this time, we see that the first drug reference is on the 29th of March 2015, where Amber Heard was concerned that he was quote unquote effed up. Through this period, he was also receiving medical treatment for his finger, and he was also going through abstinence from substance use. That is a key context to this. In fact, the Deloitte note does attest to not smoking marijuana in 3 days, and says a majority of his issues with Amber Heard has been from using drugs and alcohol. Before I break this down, I just want to give a quick disclaimer in the sense that there is a lot more that happened within this time frame, and we will be revisiting this timeline. I am only jumping around to explain what the monster could have meant, and what this shows me is he could have been referencing the fact that he has a lot more clarity in his life. Just based on that alone, it shows a multi-purpose use of the word by Depp. A message from JD to Stephen Deuters, anyway, on the 14th of May 2015 says, need to discuss the news helicopters hovering outside the house this morning. I'm ready to shoot a mother effer, but don't worry, the monster is not involved. This strongly suggests that this is more about losing control and getting angry, but he's trying his hardest to contain it. There is basis for this kind of understanding, because on the 13th of May 2015, they are in Australia this time, the second time. The records does show that they actually left for Australia on the 18th of April 2015. So this is the second time that they're in Australia. The newspaper clippings around this time does document a raid or a checking in of some sort because of the dogs issue that they had when they were down under.
Mr. Depp has to either take his dogs back to California, or we're going to have to euthanize them.
This could have most likely been the stress around that period where his house was being taken over, and him referencing this helicopter or seeing this helicopter, he's probably thinking news media is here to make a whole lot of hubbub about nothing, and that's getting him really cheesed up. And that seems to be more plausible than drug use as it was being framed in the VA case, because again, he is a celebrity and he is going to get media press attention, especially when they got the hold of the possibility that he was being charged by the government for bringing these dogs into this country illegally. It turns out to be that Amber was charged, just for full disclosure. Again, it shows that this word is a multi-purpose word that has way more than one meaning to Depp, and it really depends in the context that is being used. And the context that is being used so far has been very colorful and also more indicative of him having to do a certain thing for him to say, yeah, he locked up the monster, he put it away. So what exactly has he done to actually exemplify this? We need to look no further than the string of messages that's been sent on the 28th of June 2015. That was not in the case. Depp to Dr. Kipper on the 28th of June 2015 reads, "Thank you, my darling Kipper. All those technical abbreviations left me flummoxed and in the dark. Soon I must see you and just hang out. My deformed finger and I have no friends. By the way, Amber and I have been absolutely perfect for 3 effing months solid. I have locked away my monster child in a cage within, and it's effing worked. We are goddamn best friends now. Amazing. Big love to you, my brother, JD." What this reads to me is a further expansion or further context being provided to what was sent to Jury Judge. Of course, Kipper would not know about that message, but it's paralleling the same thing, because that message shows the context of him kicking the drugs. This message shows the context of him continuing to kick the drugs, if the drugs was to be the context. So on the 1st of July 2015, there was a message also from Depp to Dr. Kipper, which says, "I have been at peace for the last 3 months. It's been amazing, but somehow locked into this very unpleasant and belittling mode in the last 3 days. If we count back, that's 30th, 29th, and the 28th of June. We can see a clear turn and a clear departure from that. He goes on to read, "The accusations, verbally abuse and insult, stooping to one, the most unjust. You haven't changed. You effing desperate hypocrite. You didn't out the monster, which I think means you didn't put away the monster. You're a pathetic fraud. Man, you know how hard I've worked to put that mother effer in his cage, and I did that. Me, I took all those other problems and rid myself of them. If you're worried about Xanax, prescribe me something different with more potency. I don't take them all that often, just when the brain is inundated with this horrible badgering and half-truths from my wife by the WSI. I don't know what that actually means. From the context spanning from the Texas to Jerry Judge to now, it does suggest this has a lot more to do with your arguments. That the fact that he actually said, and I'm gonna quote again, saying, I took all those other problems and rid myself of them. This to me is so, it puts a massive sore between the idea that it's just drugs and more into the ballpark with what he has been failing to do, staying in arguments and dealing with it the way Amber Heard wants to deal with it. That is why this text is so indicative of this particular excerpt from the 4-hour audio.
That sounds very good, and I agree. But what about what are we going to do different in the moment when you're mad and you go fuck it and you decide all bets are off?
In the moment, well, look what I did in Australia. Look what I accomplished. I put the fucker away. I told myself every fucking day, no, he's gone. No, he's gonna fucking put him away. Put him away. By a list of the things that I feel that fuck you over or make you feel shitty or anything like that, I fucking, when we're in the moment, I remember it. I remember what I put on my list.
The splitting argument, he didn't split all through Australia. When he's messaging all of these, he's just saying, I put away that side of me that always leaves. If you don't believe me, that is what Amber Heard actually says in the text messages that led up to this audio being recorded.
You're right. I don't want the monster. I need my man. I need to talk to you. Please, Johnny. Don't force me to be something else to you. This is taking me for granted and I can never stop before this turns into something far darker.
Whoa.
Describing yourself in that text message, right?
The exact opposite. I'm trying to interrupt him starting a new cycle where he starts using again.
He's not responding to you, Ms. Heard.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to desperately stop him.
That's
Please
not what
answer the
that
phone,
says.
Say. Doesn't this mean anything to you? And it goes on. And I won't read all these messages.
No,
but
read
you're
them all.
saying, please answer over and over again. Right?
It was very important to me. I was running out of time and I was trying desperately to stop him.
He wasn't with you, Ms. Heard.
Exactly, which is how I knew it was about to get a lot worse. He would leave, use, and come back way worse, with way less reality, with more delusions.
Now I'm going to look at the inconsistent statements that I found with Depp statements. I didn't really find any inconsistent statements regarding this incident, and I mean regarding the Wino Tattoo Forever incident. What he said regarding the monster, based on everything that we have broken it down, it's a lot more indicative to be drugs and also splitting, but it is not as what Amber Heard had actually proclaimed it to be. There was no use of the word monster until probably after the May incident, and he started becoming commonplace when he started splitting more and more. So what could have likely happened? Let's go back to the Wino Forever incident just for a second. It's a good time to actually highlight that it is not recorded anywhere that Depp has ever got on his knees, cried, and apologized profusely. And I mean that, and I'm going to caveat here because it was recorded in the therapist notes, I think it's sometime in September, that he had actually done this. However, I'm referring to using the word monster while he was doing it. That's why I said the monster is very relevant. Now, as for Amber Heard and her account in regards to this incident, it's not really been substantiated by anything regarding this incident. The only thing that does seem to have a bit of basis is the fact that we do see Depp smash furniture. Again, the date changes everything, because the incident is firmly placed early 2012, It is January and there is no description of smashing things. In fact, it seems a lot more congruent that she is describing the smashing of things in November and the loose corroboration is for the 18th of January. It doesn't seem to work where you consider the times he did smash things and beat her up. She's trying to present is he beat her up and he smashed things. Unless I'm mistaken, though it is a he said she said kind of scenario, it would make sense why Amber Heard would ask him to get a tattoo after she had seen and come to learn about the tattoo about Winona Ryder. He eventually got it because we can see that through his body all over the years. An argument likely occurred from his refusal to get the tattoo at the time, or based on Depp's redirect on day 4, and judging by the therapist's record on March 7th, 2013, that if this incident did occur in 2013 rather than 2012, it does have basis that there was a potential disagreement or insecurity surrounding their relationship, as not once did Amber Heard want to go public, according to the notes with Bonnie, but twice she wanted to go public. So when you bring all of this into consideration, it would make sense why she may have became upset. So all of this is very convoluted. This is, by honesty, the most intricate, well interwoven incidents that I have looked at. It's so convoluted with so many moving parts. But again, I'm looking at it from all angles. Somehow this incident with Keith Richards came only in the UK case. She said that all of this was happening when they were filming the Keith Richards documentary. The declaration makes the date pretty clear that this was March 8th. I mean, this was the reason why there was even an argument that there was 2 incidents. The 8th of March 2013 was one incident, and the 22nd of March was the other incident. With the cross-examination, Camille doesn't know exactly what date this happened. Depp's accuser doesn't know exactly what date this happened. Weirdly, she doesn't know when this happened, where the amount of times that she was hit on the face with multiple times with rings could have occurred.
You don't know how many times he hit you in the face.
That's correct.
So Mr. Depp hit you in the face multiple times while he was wearing rings on this occasion, correct?
Which occasion in March are you referencing? You weren't
The
specific.
testimony that you gave on day 15 of this trial, March of 2013. You weren't specific as to the day.
There were several incidents.
The one where he hit you several times in the face.
Sorry, just so I understand better. There were several incidents in March. Which one are you asking me about?
The time that he hit you several times in the face wearing rings.
Well, he pretty much
March
always.
of 2013.
Right. What are you asking me? I'm sorry.
He was wearing rings on that occasion?
I pretty much always knew him to wear rings.
Okay, let's please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 170A. You testified that this is a picture you took after that incident, right, Ms. Heard?
Yes, that was one where he grabbed me.
And hit you in the face so many times that you don't remember.
That's correct.
And there's no injuries to your face in this picture, are there?
Yep. Not that this picture shows.
And there's no medical records reflecting that you sought treatment after this alleged incident either.
I did not need to go to the doctor at the time.
Wait, what?
Despite
Then they
hitting
weren't
you
that
several
bad.
times that you lost count with
Yep.
rings on on his fingers.
That's correct. I did not seek medical attention, other than my therapist.
You testified to another incident in March where Mr. Depp hit you while he was wearing a lot of rings.
Yes, ma'am.
And you testified you felt like your lip went through your teeth and it got a little blood on the wall. There isn't a picture of you with injuries after that alleged incident, is there?
I don't know if I've seen one. I can't recall. There are a lot of pictures.
The evidence proves as such from the closing submissions in the UK case that she even said to her mom, no, he was not being violent with me, it's just what she said. Depp, however, in his third witness statement, addresses this in paragraph 11. As you can see, Depp recollects that it was about a partner that she had denied being in a relationship. Depp denies Whitney even coming over for the 8th of March. The 22nd and 23rd of March respective incidents only came about on day 11 of the UK trials. What likely happened behind this incident is that had a fight with an ex on the 8th of March based on what they both had testified to. The most important part about this is Johnny Depp did not allege violence from Amber Heard. It was obscenities being screamed at him, etc., and him retreating and dropping the allegation that was made against her. Now, that is really important to highlight because they're saying that he dabbled all these incidents, but this doesn't seem to hold up to scrutiny because there is no denial and attacking the person that did it and saying, no, they did this to me, or they were the ones that was perpetrating this violence. For this particular incident, he said that they had an argument. He raised a grievance. She screamed obscenities. She got angry, called him insecure, and just dropped the issue, which does seem like reality because that is what her claim has always been. He's insecure when she is with other men and women, and this seems to add up to that because this is the first time it's being brought up. That would make sense that she would actually say that in that moment when she's being inquired about her ex-boyfriend. I think it is much more likely that the only possible truth behind this incident is they had an argument that escalated from the ex, from what had occurred in regards to the Wino Forever incidents, that if there was an ex in the picture, and what could have been likely there is there was jealousy brewing over that and it's now spilling over to this particular incident. Depp had also made her feel insecure. If you look at the evidence around the time frame, there was a talk of them going public and him not really budging for, as it seems it wasn't happening. If we are to believe the truth of those therapists, statements, they were not going public, and this really bothered her. So for her now to then turn around and be asked about the guy that she could potentially be seeing, we don't know. She said that they hadn't escalated the fight. I cannot discount that bruise. It does have metadata. I do admit this does present a bit of issues because, again, it was admitted into the UK case. It was sent to our mother, and it does say 2 weeks ago, which would land it on the 8th of March to the 23rd of March. The bruise would maybe still be there because it's untreated. But what is really bothering me is the accounts of being beaten in the face so much, being punched that blood drew from your lips, cut lip, all of those things. That bothers me because there is no evidence of that in the picture. I understand that 2 weeks later these things do heal, so why haven't her arm healed? I'm not a medical expert. I can't answer that question. So the next best thing that I decided to do was jump on the internet and find out, hey, what was she doing around this time from the 8th to the 22nd? So in my little search, I've came across these pictures from her own fan site, and the first thing I was looking at was her arm, whether this bruise was there or not. Apparently it was taken on the 18th of March, but it was added on the 22nd of March. There is absolutely no bruising that could be seen that's indicative of the one that is experienced on the 22nd. The text messages as well, based on what was presented in the UK case, was quite skewed. In fact, I really want to know what she was rushing Whitney for, because to me now it seems like it's just an exaggeration, that if there was no violence that actually occurred, what was the rush to get Whitney over? What was she trying to stop? Maybe a potential violence, that's fine, that's plausible. Whitney came in approximately 3:08, 3:12 or something around that time. Around 4:21, Amber Heard messaged Whitney actually asking her how is it? Just tell him I love him, please. So sending this message, it doesn't really make sense based on what she was alleging about him being violent and being drunk, but she doesn't actually say this in the US case, and it's just left for you to try and figure out whether something happened or not. But there was no actual incident of physical violence against her on the 22nd for the VA case. It's actually not registered at all. You can read through it, not said at all, not even mentioned. But let's continue on with the timeline. At 7:18 p.m, Whitney does message Amber Heard saying, "Shut up, don't thank me for anything, I wish I could feel my face." to which Amber replies at 7:19 saying, ha ha ha, ha, laughing off what I presume, based on the context of what she laid out on the table, that was at, I believe, 2:30 p.m. on the same day. She laid that out on the table because now with this context, it seems like Depp and Whitney were always Whitney was always planning to come over. I mean, she already has a tampon applicator on the table. I don't actually believe that Depp used this, but that's just my opinion. I haven't seen any evidence to suggest. I don't think even he attests to even using a tampon applicator. But continuing with the timeline, at 7:33 p.m., Whitney messages Amber Heard that Kyle is driving her home. This is clear because she's done cocaine while she was with Depp. And like Depp, and this must be highlighted, Depp actually said for this particular incident, she was doing cocaine. That's why I infer cocaine, because of these messages. Because why else would you be driving? She drove. She didn't get a lift to the place. She drove from her premises to this place and was a bit late. So why would you drive all the way there and be needing to take a lift home by another driver? The only reason is you're either intoxicated or drugged up. Based on all this evidence, this ended up being exaggerated on epic proportions. Evidence around this trip is not as scarce as one may believe. The incident supposedly happened in June, with another incident on a plane following happening in the same month. There were a lot of characters for this particular incident that this case does hold a lot of weight, with the absence of documentary evidence such as communications, such as pictures, all of those things. But there's so much around this incident that you can actually ascertain what could have happened on that fateful day. Raquel Pennington, we're gonna start with her, a friend of Amber Heard since 2003. She testifies that Depp, Amber Heard, Whitney, Enriquez, Nathan Holmes, Brittany Eustace, and Kelly Milano were all here. Raquel, also known as Rocky, has testified that he was at the same campfire in a circle, and she was 6 to 10 feet away from, or close to Depp, I should say. And it was Kelly Sue that Depp became angry at and aggressive towards. This was all she saw in regards to the campsite. She does expound more on the next day of the depot with relatively the same details. She testifies that the following morning when she went to the trailer, that they supposedly were not there. The door was open and she just went in and saw the trailer in disarray, to which she describes was she saw the light fixture has been knocked off, things were also thrown, cushions were off the couch, etc. Christina is the next up, and what she accounts at this scene is near impossible to actually have happened. She does say that Depp apologizing profusely to Amber Heard for what had happened, that he's sorry that he would not let out the monster again. It is important to note that Amber Heard does not even claim that Depp was apologizing or even calling himself a monster. So I am very intrigued as to how she heard that. In fact, I'm so intrigued that I would pay $7 million to actually hear this out. She also earlier testified that the night previously that she was the only one that was stone cold sober and went to bed early, as she did not get to see the events that unfolded at the campfire. That must be noted. She did fear fighting had been happening. She said that she actually overheard shouting from the other trailer. Now, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp both attest to shouting, and from there, must note that Christina Sexton actually said that she saw bodyguards ran over in order to actually stop the fight. She also said that the bodyguards were at the scene when Depp was apologizing profusely. That's going to be very important later on. We're now bringing Whitney Heard or Enriquez into Hicksville. It must be noted now, if it's not clear already, that Raquel Pennington doesn't actually testify to Depp grabbing Kelly Sue Milano's hand, and also no one else sees this. Whitney does actually confess to being too drunk. Everyone does actually agree that Depp was playing songs at a campfire. Like Sexton, she does retire early and she went to bed. The next morning, she does attest to seeing cleanup. We're gonna get into the cleanup part later because she doesn't really expound more on this. She just says that she went to a trailer and it looked like a bomb went off. This only leaves Morgan Knight, which was the manager of Hicksville. Now, and it's very important here, the UK case was quite not as popular as the US case because that's how he found out. There was a tweet about it and he just responded, and he was contacted by Depp's team, and the rest was history. After the trial, Morgan Knight actually took onto Twitter to actually further give his account of what actually happened that night. I have to be fair, his public perception of Amber Heard, he doesn't really like her at all. He does believe she's an abuser. But anyway, in the Twitter exchanges that was going on with pretty much Amber Heard supporters, I just don't know why he chose to recount his events to these people, because they're not going to change their minds. They're already set up and they believe that this woman is just innocent. There's no point trying to convince them. But as Morgan Knight tried to do on Twitter in the 6th of October 2022, quote tweeting a tweet from a now deactivated I Believe You A account. In response, Morgan Knight just says JD only reacted to the abuse he suffered with abusive language of his own. This doesn't mean he's an instigator. A likely 50-plus-year-old user that goes by the name of Veracity decided to pose some questions of our own to him. It must be said that where the user was hung up was the initial tweet that not even Amber's counsel used as a viable defense or anything like that, because one can see that this is just a clear summation of what happened that night, that he literally was not with them all night, obviously, because if he was with them all night, that would mean that he saw and witnessed the cavity search that was being... Let me move on. So as you can see from this Twitter conversation that goes back and forth in detailing who was where and what was happening at the same time, Morgan Knight does testify to being at the scene, and there was basically playing campfire songs. Again, everyone attests to Depp playing the songs. The one thing that is a testament to Morgan's account, something that was very interesting that he doesn't detail but was detailed by Raquel, which was him being rude, or even him talking about Kelly Sue. So with the absence of Kelly Sue's testimony or ability to even testify, only Rocky and Morgan Knight's accounts are to be relied on what happened at that campfire. Both witnesses did not claim to see Depp grab Kelly Sue's arm. This supersedes Amber's claim and was likely an exaggeration of what happened. Amber also linked the same occurrence of Depp at grabbing a woman's arm in another incident, but this time it was on a plane. But for this event, only one text to Paul Bettany on the 11th of July 2013 seemingly either makes reference to this particular event or the incident we are about to get into. What was actually going on between this incident that Morgan, who was there for 45 minutes, ranging 45 minutes to an hour, as he basically put it, could not see all of these events unfold. With the absence of him even accounting for Kelly Sue or any violence or so, it does raise the question, what did the one player in all of this even say? Because we know what Amber Heard said, but we don't know what Depp has said. And Depp has always said that in regards to this incident, that he was protecting Miss Heard's honor. What does the UK case have to say about this? In a confidential annex that could be found in the unsealed documents number 5. After inspection, accounts of the cavity search was found, including accounts of her not realizing at first that this was SA. Depp's reply could be found on his third witness statement. Paragraph 15 admits to Amber Heard doing MDMA and mushrooms, mostly drank alcohol. He explains here that he observed Kelly Sue running her hands all over Amber's body very sexually, to no objections by Amber Heard. Based on the context of him being already jealous of the exes, it would make sense why this would provoke him as well. He alleges also that this incident did not occur at the campfire where he played the guitar, but at nightfall when they were looking around the place. He claims the girls were congregating, and this was when Kelly Sue began to touch Amber Heard that was sexual and aggressive. This does make a bit of sense as to why everyone else did actually witness Depp playing the guitar, including Morgan Knight, but they don't witness the arm grabbing or even heard what he said. So it is more likely than not that this incident would not have happened, and this is where Morgan Knight is key to this. If this was to have occurred the way that Depp is saying truthfully, Morgan Knight would not have witnessed the arm holding. Also note that Rocky did not testify in the UK regarding this incident. He did testify for other incidents, but just not this one. He denies the rest of the allegations by Amber and further asserts that he was being harangued by Amber and screaming at him. Sexton's account of hearing the screaming does check out. I accept that part of Sexton's account. I just think the bodyguard was an over exaggeration, because again, Amber doesn't even allege bodyguards even coming in to even calm down the fight, and if they did, the essay would not have happened the way that Amber is describing it. That's just from my point of view. It wouldn't have been like that, because it would have been interrupted, and Amber would have made sure to note that the bodyguards were there. Depp also claims he did not do MDMA, as it has not much effect on him, and again corroborates Sexton seeing what she saw in the powdered bags, etc. Most interesting of all Sexton's account was paragraph 30, 31, and 33, where she said she heard what the bodyguards had actually said, and on 31, where she claims she was helping cleaning up. And with this helping cleaning up, it corroborates Whitney's account. She said in the UK that she heard them, and there was a conversation from Rocky that Johnny had grabbed the women because he didn't like her hugging Amber Heard, and said something along the lines of breaking her wrist. The flirting or affection was corroborated by Depp on day 2 of Cross, as Depp himself does claim she was putting her hands on Amber Heard, but with minimal corroboration at the campfire of the incident even occurring, because this was supposed to occur there and it just didn't occur there, and according to Depp, it was supposed to occur when they were looking around the place. So for this retelling, the only corroboration that helps Amber Heard, if possible, is the Arangin claim, as let's be honest, there's no dispute. But if she felt that this was frivolous, she is actually entitled to be angry, and that would make sense, as in the therapy notes with Bernie Jacobs, 13th of May 2013 entry says that he was jealous about her filming with other men. Though there's nothing alleged by her regarding films, though self-reported, it does seem to fit JD's account of the Arangin happening as a result of him confronting her about it. However, Morgan Knight's testimony does really blow this case apart, and in my honest opinion, it does really support Depp's account a lot more. So let me explain. Due to Morgan's account of the aftermath of the SA claim incident, Depp's denials of the claim of him even destroying the place, this does have merit. He claimed that he did not trust the trailer, and that he went to the manager about the light fixture he had punched. He reiterated that he didn't go with security to get the manager, and the manager had fixed the light fixture. This is Depp claiming this. In the UK case in 2020, again, Morgan Knight didn't testify in the UK. He was a rebuttal witness in the US. Connolly, who was the only security guard on that night, he denies going to see both Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, and with the absence of Amber Heard's testimony to any security detail even appearing, Sexton's account is severely undermined and really pretty much at this point discarded. Morgan corroborates by accounting for the bill of it being $62. He went on to detail what would actually match Depp's UK testimony 10-minute window. Say what you want in regards to Morgan Knight saying, you know, how they let anyone just run in and pretend to be at a trial, with everybody except for Whitney saying that the light fixture was broken. It is more likely that the light fixture was the only broken part of that trailer, and everyone else was just exaggerating the event for whatever reasons. Don't care for the motivation. Nonetheless, those are the facts.
I had to turn off the testimony a couple times because the Paul Bettany moment where they called him a drug buddy, it was like, you know, you leave your body, because it was like that was just such a cheap shot. And you know, because I was there for a guy, and it was the same thing. They came after me because it's triangulation. You want to separate the target from their friends so they don't have a support system. There's no witnesses who can come forward and say, no, it was the other way around. He didn't abuse her. We saw her do things to him. They want to get those people away. It's too much trouble. And I had to stop, and I walk around my kitchen island. I don't know why, but you have to move to get back in your body. And I came back and I started again, but I was just like, that dude is not part of this. He didn't ask to be a part of this. He was just trying to support a friend. Don't do that. That right there is abuse through the courts.
So then I'm going to jump to, and it's not much of a jump, to June 26, 2013. There was a plane ride to Russia with Johnny. Well, tell the jury about that particular event.
Well, that was the first and last time I ever decided it would be a decent idea to do drugs with Johnny. I did MDMA with him on the plane.
This is a new one.
I just had never, I was very against, obviously, the cocaine.
This is not part of the canon.
A problem. I was very much against him using cocaine. I was against the drinking, supportive of the sobriety. I had done MDMA before, you know, I thought it's a lovey drug. It's a, you know, it's like a kind of, I never knew anyone to
very
get
opposed to
violent
drugs,
on
except
it.
when I do them.
And
so what happened?
We took MDMA. I took a capsule, and Johnny took several. I didn't count, but you know, it's very different when you see someone take one versus a handful of something. But nothing seemed to set any alarm bells off, and things were going fine until
Handful of pills didn't
until the flight attendant got involved. Flight attendant came by, was engaging with us. The flight attendant, Johnny offered her some. She of course said no, and then after some back and forth between them, Johnny convinced her that it would be fine. So she acquiesced and took MDMA with us. And within, you know, a few minutes go by, and the same thing happened that happened on the mushrooms at Hicksville with the woman Kelly Sue, who I've told you about. Flight attendant got friendly with me, but just friendly, just like MDMA friendly, you know, was
just cavity search
I'm
friendly.
a woman, he's a man, so she was
Well, how do
naturally.
you know what MDA friendly is? Because
Tell the jury what MDMA friendly is,
sat on the
Amber.
arm of the chair I was sitting in.
From your one time of doing it.
I mean, after all, she's on drugs, and
The cuddle puddle.
Johnny grabs her hand and tells her not to touch me, and she kind of reacts, grabbed her by the wrist and slammed it down on the table. And
I called it.
And I remember thinking, I've heard this before. Almost as soon as we get into the hotel room, Johnny's accusing me of effectively having engaged that, caused that. I, of course, deny it, point out what I thought was obvious. At one point, Johnny just shoves me, just shoves me hard. And I fall back onto this glass table. I catch myself on the table. I'm trying to stand up, literally. I'm in this hotel room trying to do my best to fight mostly the verbal accusations, but also I try to stay on my feet. At some point, Johnny whacks me in the face.
Whacks you?
I remember kind of crying and feeling, I went into the bathroom. I came out at some point because bodyguard Jerry Judge was in the hall. And I don't recall seeing Johnny in the hallway, but I remember seeing Jerry Judge.
Convenient that dead Jerry
He
Judge is
gestures
now one
to
of
my
her
nose,
witnesses.
and holds out his handkerchief, like a cloth handkerchief. And I went inside the room.
What, if any, injury did you have?
I had a little blood coming out of my nose. I didn't feel it at the time until Jerry gave me Jerry let me know.
Let's cast our minds back to that timeline in part 1. In the 2016 article by the Daily Mirror, it was reported that Amber Heard and Johnny Depp had an explosive bust-up in a private jet that led the actress cowering in the bathroom. Apparently, Depp had drowned in booze and smoked weed when on board. This incident is now filtering through both Tokyo and Russia, as she has now made allegations for both these events now.
Heard, this is a picture of you and Mr. Depp in Russia, correct?
That's correct.
And this is you and Mr. Depp in Russia for the Lone Ranger dinner, correct?
It was a dinner function.
Destroyed.
You have no visible injuries to your face, do you?
None that you can see.
None that you can see.
Even though Mr. Depp whacked you in the face so hard that your nose bled?
He did.
While wearing chunky big rings, right?
That's correct.
If any of these jurors have been punched with a ring, it's over.
She also never alleged this particular incident in the UK, and again, Johnny doesn't even bring up this event, nor does he even receive questions regarding this event from Amber Heard's counsel. What's even more interesting, that is in a therapist note that she alleged documented abuse from 2011, also doesn't document this that could have possibly jogged her memory one way or the other. I am not saying that she should do this for every single alleged event. I am just saying she said she did, and it wasn't allowed in.
When is the first time you were called upon to provide a detailed accounting of as many times as
They're
you
trying
could
to get ahead
recall
of
physical
her
and
testimony
sexual
being
abuse
inconsistent?
by Mr. Depp?
A few months ago, February in 2022, this year.
When you were
But the deposition's the full
to provide those, what did you do to be able to prepare that accounting, that full accounting?
Elaine's
I
already
looked at my
flustered.
therapist notes. I had the benefit of those notes, which we had received in February, as well as I reviewed calendars, photos, text messages, my journals,
This
my
opens
diaries,
the door.
of which there were many. I put all of those together.
Notes,
It took
calendars,
a lot of
photos.
time to be able to, adequately refresh my recollection and fill in the details over the course of the 5 years we were together.
Okay.
But
Now,
her
there's one
memory
more.
is
You
based on her
also
therapist
provided
notes,
a
is what she's saying, and that's not
declaration in this case
helpful.
early on. Do you recall that, trying to move the case to California?
Christina?
Yes, there was a declaration in
I don't know.
2019.
With the plane, one of the things is that all of those, like the flight attendants, would be like logged. You're not flying in a plane without your name being recorded.
Absolutely.
And they're spending millions on this case, right? Like literal millions of dollars. There's no way that they haven't tracked this person down if it actually happened and gotten testimony. So I'm going, all right, so we're going to see this flight attendant, really blow things open, because there's no way that an NDA isn't going to hold up against a subpoena. And I'm sitting there waiting for this flight attendant to come in and, tell us like all of these things. And I'm going, oh, they don't have the flight attendant. That's a concern because, how do you not, you would make sure you had this person.
Absolutely.
And I'm going, okay, that tells us that this is not, not as reported.
By even Amber saying that I heard this before in regards to the breaking of the arm, if I had debunked that the breaking of the arm could not have happened the way she was describing it, it's likely it was also the case as well. It did not happen on this occasion. In regards to this particular incident, that does make me wonder what went on in this particular relationship, because before the Boston plane incident, she alleged 3 separate incidents. We have already been through 2 of them, but this last one is particularly bizarre because why this incident was being alleged on this particular date is beyond me. She claimed that she was going on. We know what happened with the Camille cross exam.
You also testify that Mr. Depp, again, whacked you in the face after the Met Gala in May of 2014, right?
That is correct.
You testified that you thought he hit you so hard he broke your nose.
That's correct.
You testified you took a picture of your face
She's
after
biting
this.
her lip a lot.
I did.
But you didn't show that picture to the jury, did you?
I would like to.
But you didn't show it, did you?
That's not up to me.
What?
I understand you were under an obligation to produce all photographs after any alleged incident.
Metadata, put it on your bingo
Produced
cards.
everything.
Metadata.
Your nose doesn't appear to be injured in any of these pictures, does it, Ms. Heard?
I'm wearing makeup.
Wow.
Your nose doesn't appear to be injured in any of these pictures, does it, Ms. Heard?
That's why I'm wearing makeup.
She
And
said
makeup covers up swelling, right?
Makeup will not cover up swelling. Ice will, though.
No,
ice
No.
will
Ice will cover up swelling?
Ice reduces swelling. Normally, the swelling after that kind of injury is not as bad as you might imagine. And for me,
okay.
it wasn't that
Well, now
bad.
she's a medical
I have a
expert.
picture of it underneath the makeup. That's how I know how to reference it.
Do you? Where's the
picture you haven't produced or shown to this jury, right, Ms. Heard?
I've produced everything.
But you haven't shown it to this jury.
I would very much like to. It's not my job.
Talk to your counsel.
Ma'am! Is it a doctored photo? Is that the problem? It was not admitted?
Your Honor, may we approach? Holy. She is sitting here testifying that she produced things her counsel is unwilling to produce. Can we go into this?
You can't let her imply to the jury that this favorable evidence for her exists, but her lawyers simply are choosing not to produce it.
Right, because it also casts an implication on Camille and her team because they could produce it if they had it.
Right.
And they could criticize the picture.
She's suggesting they have the photo because she produced everything.
Yep.
In Depp's second witness statement, paragraph 36 does show Depp admitting to drinking prior to the flight and presents text messages to his sister, Christy Dombrowski, saying her actions added more drama than necessary. This suggests a breakup. It shows why he's reacted like this. Christy had let him know that she agreed with Amber Heard he should see a doctor. After his response, Amber Heard had copied a message to him verbatim to Christy, and it reads, "There are so many things to say. I feel like there aren't enough words in the world to articulate what I want to say to you. All I can say that I am heartbroken. My whole world has come crashing down on me. I feel so lost. But I know this. I love you more than I have loved anything. I know that you are my life's true love. The fact remains that I can't imagine life without you. And the inescapable truth is being with you has been the best thing to happen to my life. But only you have the ability to take that away from me, from both of us. I know you have a sickness. I know you are suffering. Johnny, I would do anything to be able to take that away from you. For if only I could. I love you. You are my Steve, but there's this other part of you, a shadow that exists in that hole that you understandably try desperately to treat, fix, and feel that, and that's the part." 25th of May 2015, 2 years after his detox and recovery, on the 7th of September 2016, after the divorce settlement was finalized, Depp messages Erin Boram, which is now Erin Farladi, and says he was very high when making the movie. Now, I love timelines, so let's make one. Flashback to 2014, 10 days before the plane incident, filming for Black Mass had started. More likely than not, on the 15th of May 2014, on the 20th of May, Amber visits Depp on set and also dressed very conservatively. Put a pin on that. Kenan Wyatt was also on the plane, as he claims, who says that Amber, Depp, Stephen, Savannah, and Jerry George was also on the plane. Stephen Dutus, who never testified in VA, however, was testifying in the UK. His witness statement says that he had witnessed Amber getting increasingly aggressive towards Depp and haranguing him, who was pretty much drawing, as he always does. He submitted the drawing of the scene plan from his vantage point and asserts it would not be possible for Depp to have been kicking Amber Heard like she has claimed, nor had pushed the chair as described, as the chairs were affixed to the plane. He further said that Jerry George pulled Amber to the side as Amber regularly lost her temper during cross-examinations. Dutus also claimed that Depp had a slow raised leg, describing that his vicinity was quite rigid. Says it was a playful tap and not a kick. Dutus denied that Depp was even screaming obscenities. However, this is a bit maybe unreliable because he did say in his witness statements he was wearing headphones, so whether he heard the screams or not, in the text was actually screaming obscenities. This was a text to Paul Bettany. An email was read that Amber Heard had wrote herself at 11:32 p.m. on the 25th of May 2014. It is very important that you know the time as I read this email out. I just don't know if I can do this anymore. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Half of you I love madly, The other half scares me. I can't take him. I wish I could, but I can't. The problem is I never really know and understand which one I'm dealing with until it's too late. The drinking asserts me that I'm dealing with the monster, the abused, scared, insecure, violent little boy. I just can't tell where the line starts. Also, drugs seem to guarantee I will be forced to deal with the monster as well. Once again is knowing what, how much, and when, which makes all the difference. Sometimes the hangover the morning after is just as bad as the full-on disco bloodbath I've come to expect. You live in a world of enablers. You cut out and resent whether you realize it or not. Everyone who isn't an enabler. I watched yesterday as everyone around you picked you up off the floor, held you up, got you on with your life, prevented you from really falling. Yesterday I saw you passed out, vomiting 3 times. All 3 times Jerry had carried you from the floor. On the plane, Nathan mentioned how many times he had to break into the locked doors to wake you up after passing out on the toilet. Nathan, I have no reason I have to stay with you, and I won't. You don't pay me. I don't have to lie to you for my job, livelihoods, or kids. One of these times you cut yourself so badly that you needed stitches. That article is tempting right now. Anyway, this is really long, so I just again cut down to the last end. I'm mad, so mad. How would you feel if you were sold false goods? I fell for you while you were sober, a whole year. How could I know this was the lay in store for me? How dare you make me fall in love with you? Present this other self, your good half, only to rip the mask off once I was in. I feel like the biggest idiot in the world. I would have to put up so much. You have hit me repeatedly. Again, let me repeat that. You have hit me repeatedly, something you should never have done. What a effing man you are. None of this will be possible without the booze and drugs. None. This invalidates all of her testimony because she says that he's been sober for a year, but the claims that she made to the therapist was that he was drinking for a year. This invalidates all those claims now because she wrote here that he's been sober for a year. This was 2012 when she began dating. So if we were to take this as truth, all those that she told to her therapist, saying what he was doing in terms of him not being able to do it because he was drunk, etc., it just wouldn't have happened if this content, the contents was to be true. If this was a day after being kicked, you are in the privy of your own head and your own space. Why can't you just say that he kicked you on the plane last night? It's not here. I was actively looking for that because it's contemporaneous, and I will get more into the kick. The fact that she was reminded of this kick by Stephen Dutas, if this was an actual kick that actually meant a literal kick, it would be here. It is also in the realm of possibility that he was taking opiates on that day, and he was on the plane, and he was experiencing everything that he was experiencing from Amber Heard, rendering him to go into the bathroom, for him to want to break up with her on the 27th of May. That prompted the text message from her. This was the first breakup attempt that's actually recorded by Depp. God knows what happened. Amber Heard was back in the picture, and they had no more broken up. Ayo did testify that after the incident, the next day from the 24th, that Depp said to him that he doesn't remember much of being on the plane. When you look at the text messages of where the kicking text comes from, you will see the complete context being provided. And it was Stephen Dutas communicating with Amber Heard. In fact, it was almost ironclad that he was with Depp, because he does record that he is with him. This is the same message that was in 19 March Discourse, but this same message kind of throws a spanner in the works of Ayo's testimony of seeing Depp and actually being with Depp, even having a communication with him, because for this to happen, you must have been with Stephen Dutas as well. Stephen was clearly with him from AM to PM. The text says he doesn't remember much. I mean, placation does have merit here, as clearly does remember. You can see his texts before Stephen even messages what he messages. Depp messaging Amber at 10 and at 12 respectively, apologizing and this is going back to the 25th of May. Stephen texts at 3:45 p.m. Now, I could be naive. Does it seem like he does not remember much from the flight, or is this, as Depp said, an attempt to establish contact? Have many thought why he was so resigned to breaking up the following days after this? He's just more likely than not, he saw the message here from Amber Heard saying that she doesn't know if she could stay. It must be noted that Raquel, who has been Amber's friend since 2003, provided no testimony for this particular incident. Now, Kate James also provided testimony in the UK and the VA proceedings. In the US, she testified to seeing Ayo, Raquel and Amber at the Chateau Marmont. But moving on, that's not the important part. Despite my skepticism of these notes, May the 13th, 2014 still does remain an account that does pique my interest because it does reference James Franco. The fight on the plane was about James Franco. Despite Depp denying shouting and screaming obscenities, which it does say he does do from his own texting, he does not deny the jealousy. So let's really dig into this kick. And I know this is very nitpicky, but I'm not going to shy from this because a lot of commotion has been made in regards to this particular kick. This text messages have been shared everywhere. But we need to go back into the context of this particular audio that I'm using as an example that no kicking occur. The context of this entire conversation, and on top of this was at 15 minutes into the audio before the plane kick was even mentioned.
The plane, I thought, this is it. We're dead. After the plane, we're fucking dead. I don't know how to look at her anymore. I don't know how to feel anymore. I don't know. Again, what you think of an argument where you didn't say shit, I mean, again, I'm sorry, but there were people out the door, right outside the door, who heard everything.
In Toronto? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Then get them in the room right now, the mystery help that you keep referencing, and have them sit in front of me. I want to hear someone tell me what I said to you, because still I have yet to hear one thing. I called you spineless at the end of one fight, and I called you a coward. No, I said spineless and pussy. Those were two names that I called you, and I told you what you were doing was spineless, and I called you a pussy, and I said I was sorry, and I meant it, but it was at the end of a fight. I had been fucking provoked to no end, prodded, poked, kicked. I had heard every nasty thing you could think of saying to a woman before that comment came out.
This is not me gaslighting you. That is literally her usage of the word. After mentioning it earlier in the timestamps, the times he used the word was literally again correcting the record.
I buried it. Your wife didn't take more than 5 seconds, more than 10 minutes of your time in all those mornings. And I understood you had something very important going on, and I wanted to support you, but I was dying on the inside, dying. I have never felt so depressed about our situation ever. I have had resolve before. I have walked away from you when you're drunk and fucked up and did things that are like, but Toronto was like the plane that the plane where you kicked me. It was so bad and so unprovoked.
Wait.
Sorry.
The plane when I kicked you. You can't just reference it like with the plane that I kicked you.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Like the one from a long time ago.
It's on the tape recorder. If you're gonna say that I kicked you, you'll say everything else you did.
On the plane that I'm talking about is the plane from Boston. I did nothing to you. I mean, everyone can attest. Everyone will back it up. I did nothing to you that time. You were fucked up. You're real fucked. I'm talking about the long time ago. That was the only time in my relationship with you. Remember, I went back to New York that I felt so unsure about us. It was after Toronto. And I sat on that all week. and cried every fucking day.
It was after Toronto won. This Toronto? I didn't kick you on the fucking plane.
I know, I said that was the only other time in our relationship that I felt like this.
Regarding kicking the door, he's speaking literally. The kicking of the door to his head, that's literal. The correction of the record to say, I didn't kick you on a plane, that's literal. When she mentions kicking, have to now look at, okay, how many times has he mentioned kicking in the literal sense, and how many times has she mentioned kicking in the literal sense? When you look at this, especially with the context that we have received, prodding, kicking, etc., all these are action words attached to emotions. So we have to now ask the question, how many times has she actually alleged literal kicking by Depp? The reason why I say is in regards to him splitting is because in the same audio he says, well, on a plane, I can't split.
I'm not going to be in a physical fucking altercation.
Then don't.
You fucking hit me last night. You fucking...
What about all the other times you split? Come on, you cannot act like that. It's about that. It's not.
Well, on a plane, I can't.
No, and you hit back. So don't act like you don't fucking participate.
I pushed you.
I'm not going to get into the details of that fight. You and I both know that you split your nerves with us.
That's the context to the kicking. Because again, he knows her. He knows how she talks. He has to placate a little bit because she's quite emotional and she uses a lot of metaphors to kind of get his point across. He understands this, but to us listening in on this audio, it's very difficult to kind of decipher what's going on. But I think there's enough evidence here to actually understand that the splitting that he was speaking about was only one plane, and that's Boston to California, because he was trying to split on that plane, like literally go to the bathroom. As he said, I'm going to the bathroom. We have the audio from Amber Heard even proving he was in the bathroom he was splitting from her from, but his opiate actually kicks in at this point. So when it comes to this particular kicking, we get the understanding that for one and only thing, that that the kicking on the plane was more leaning towards Depp's side. Now, Depp did say that it was a playful tap and not necessarily a clip. So you can maybe put that down to abuse and say, yeah, they're talking about abuse. I just don't think Amber even agrees with you, because again, she doesn't reference that event as if it was something that she was actually kicked. She references that event for the mean words he said about her. That's what she's concerned about. The context to when even writing her own letter, she doesn't reference this kick. She says, you hit me. That's a massive departure from kicking. So what's the hitting that she's referring to? Because she uses the same word in the same list of words, of action words that has been listed. So again, I have no idea. Just to be clear, the only reason I believe that it was a playful tap is, again, with someone that is as emotional like this. And I'm not saying that because of her gender. I'm just saying that because that's what I'm seeing. She is very easily hurt by words, etc., which is unfortunate, but it is a reality that has to be acknowledged. That is the case. So a little thing like even that would make her react in a manner that would seem like the earth has frozen over, and it would be bad for her. It would be blown out of proportion because she is very reactive to every single thing. It seems a lot more plausible that it was a playful tap. Steven saw a playful tap. Keenan White didn't really see anything, but I could pretty much figure that out as him just dozing off after listening to his music. Those are the eyewitness accounts, coupled with communications or absence thereof. You may also believe her accounts in the self-reported therapist notes or what she claims on the stand, and I wouldn't fault you for doing so. It was quite emotionally charged, etc. I will conclude this here. The evidence is there.
The way depositions, because they're so important in impeaching witnesses or calling out inconsistent statements or even using parts of them for whatever you're trying to use them for in the case, whether it's a motion, an appeal, during trial, the page and line numbers are always the most important part. Page number is where that says 43 at the top right. Then you have each line number on the left. So you would say page 43, lines 1 through 3 is what we're referencing, which again, so if you're going to play it to match it up with that. And the red squares or rectangles and the highlights can be done for a couple reasons. Lawyers can do that if those are parts that they are going to reference, number one. Number two, if you chop certain parts and are going to put them into trial, it's only a fraction of what actually happens in the deposition. There's so many things that come out that end up being irrelevant or inadmissible at trial that you're not going to use. So that's sometimes how they notate on a deposition, this is what we're going to play. And sometimes they will play the video depo and the words at the same time. So you have it notated like this. So whoever's going to push play knows where we're going to start, where we're going to stop, all of the highlighted language each side agrees to. If one side doesn't agree, they get this turned over to them so that they can say, listen, I don't agree with page 44, lines 4 and 5. And that goes in front of a judge as an objection. And the judge makes the call whether or not it's going to stay in the video or come out of the video. If it's going to come out, they'll pull it. They won't highlight it. They'll do just half a page in a square and then the bottom half of the page, leaving out just those 2 line numbers. So those notations are just for a lawyer or court's reference and sometimes to be played as part of the transcript.
Are judges present for depositions?
No, judges are not. Well, for the vast majority of depositions, no, unless it's highly contested. Somebody doesn't show up, there's a big fight beforehand, and a judge has to be there because both sides are objecting too much, and the only way to do it is to have a judge there. Very unusual, but it can happen.
Can appellate judges see this deposition as well?
So appellate judges can only consider things that happened in the trial.
Okay.
So the only thing outside of the trial, like in this case, that appellate judges can consider is evidence that the judge did not allow in, that Ms. Heard's side proffered or read into the transcript. If it was read into the transcript, regardless as to whether or not that appellate judge thinks it's hearsay, they can consider it if it's part of the record. So if it was presented to them like this, with the box and the highlights, they would consider it as it is, as it came in a trial.
In the UK statement of Amber Heard has stated Depp actually wanted her to go and support him through his detox. She was trapped with Johnny, who was verbally and physically abusive towards her. She said she reported this to Debbie. She also alleges she was kicked and pushed, grabbed her hair and slapped her. She also says that it's not true that Depp claims that she was keeping medicine away. She says that she was flown back earlier than planned and was afraid of Depp, as it has been so crazy on the island, and so she stayed in a hotel for a few days. Depp, on the other hand, in his witness statement stated that they went to Bahamas to reduce his dependency on Roxy's, not alcohol. Says he wasn't dependent or addicted to any other drugs. Depp also says she took the place of Nathan Holmes, his second personal assistant, and said that Amber Heard withheld medicine from him, which causes spasms and other withdrawals. I will sidebar here quickly because we have seen from evidence that was actually Christie that was supposed to take over. He corrected this in the VA case, so that is apparent it was supposed to be Christie. Going back to his witness statement, he says that he did not have several manic episodes requiring medical attention, and says that the door did not split in half as alleged, because that door does not actually exist in the Bahamas, but is actually one of the penthouses in LA. He also says that there was an argument on the 17th. He tried not to engage in the argument and tried to separate as she was shouting. He claimed that she said to the doctors he pushed her and denies this happening. And at the time, she wasn't claiming to be slapped or grabbed by the hair. He also says that he found Amber Heard made the recovery in Bahamas difficult, so he asked for space, and I put her up and her friends in a hotel suite, and so that he could recover undisturbed.
I'm a mental health nurse. I've done all aspects of nursing, including substance misuse, including criminal justice system and the people with offenders with mental health issues. The scenario that you have just painted with Tony. Is it Tony Depp you said?
No, sorry. Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. You know me already. Johnny Depp. Now, what happens in that case? We have a lot of cases now, especially in the older people with substance misuse that were prescribed codeine in the past.
Okay.
Or diazepam in the past. There are people who are dependent on a particular medication in the sense that they cannot function without taking that medication.
How important are these distinctions?
It depends on who is in your presence. Somebody traveling in the same bus with you, or using the same taxi with you, or being on the same street with you might not actually be able to identify the difference between addiction and dependency. But if somebody is sitting before me, based on the history, based on the presentation, I'll be able to know that this guy is dependent and not addictive to something.
In the trial, he testified that the wife that he was with was withholding medication. Is this something that would happen in the professional field? Like, have you ever been in a situation where you would withhold a drug and say, nope, you gotta wait until let's say 4 o'clock, let's say 5 o'clock, etc.?
Absolutely. I'm not saying it's the correct thing to do, but we have a procedure where, in terms of ethics of medication, we talk about the right time, because each medication has what we call time life. That is why they say they will tell you, do not administer this medication after minimum of 4 hours intervals. So, and you have to understand that people respond to pains in different ways. That's what we call pain threshold. There are people with very low pain threshold. There are people with very high pain thresholds. Take, for instance, there are some medication that they prescribe by 9 o'clock. You cannot take it again until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay. Because that is the time life of that medication. There are some medication that if it is being prescribed now, depending on what time you take it, you cannot take it before 12 hours. Otherwise, it will lead to overdose in the system. And there is something in the system that we call buffer. Okay. When that medication is too much in your system and you overload it, that means you now become intoxicated with that particular medication, because you don't allow the dose that you took earlier to excrete. That is why we are able to tell you, take it if you take 12, take it again at 6 p.m. So that means from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, the excretion has now been complete. So your body now gives, the medication that you are now taking is not going to be toxic to your system. The trick behind that is that instead of you withholding medication, you can give him a lesser, not a lesser amount. I'm not talking about the lesser amount of the same medication. You could give him a lesser amount of another painkiller. But the wife didn't do the right thing by withholding. Rather, there would have been a replacement of a lesser strength of painkiller.
Do you think that's down to maybe the wife not knowing?
Yes.
Or more of the doctor maybe not advising her properly?
That is the thing, because you should know what you take. So you are given a leaflet of every medication that you take, including multivite, so that you know exactly what you are taking. You know the effect of it.
I'll give the wife the benefit of the doubt and say she didn't know. But what he was testifying to was he felt a lot of pain, that he had to jump into the shower and turn on the hot water so that it could
suit him.
Yeah. How common of is that something that would happen if somebody couldn't wait until the next window? Could they do something like that?
Anything that he could do to help him cope with that withdrawal, because that is called withdrawal.
Okay.
Addiction is easily noticeable than dependency. Somebody could be dependent on a particular thing for years and even die with it, nobody knows. But as soon as somebody is addicted to something, you will see the panic ways if that thing is not met, if that behavior is not met.
Would you advise anybody to withhold medication from without offering an alternative, etc.?
No, that is what I said earlier, that it was not properly managed. On the course of you withholding that medication, it could go into coma.
Oh, okay.
And that would be the worst part. That is why if somebody is being detoxed, there's always an alternative. Like, depending on how the management had been, if the person was to be administered a particular medication every 6 hours, and like I said earlier, depending on individual pain threshold, there are people who can withstand pain or withdrawal. So within that time of 6 hours, there might be something in between to cushion the effect of the withdrawal until the real medication becomes available. He was not taking the medication according to how it was prescribed, but maybe there was no replacement. So the wife was trying to do him a favor by saying, look, you have to stick to how it was being prescribed, without the wife knowing that this man is experiencing withdrawal. And withdrawals is very painful.
I also came across a thread, and others having a discourse claimed it was a total fabrication, even to the point of using an 11th of August entry as proof that he was lying. Well, I am going to attempt to address each and every point of this as precise and concisely as I can. On the 13th of June 2014, the day that Depp had declared his dependency on opiates, the next day Dr. Kipper does note that Depp has body substance abuse from this consultation. Then he had issues with opiates, thus this was going to be the treatment. Kipper does also note that Amber Heard, Debbie and other staff members were going to be on the island for the detoxification. Miss Lloyd was in charge of issuing the medications as well as supervising. Amber Heard will also administer these meds, not in her presence, and Debbie Lloyd would give instructions on how to provide the medication. Amber Heard also asks they keep a close eye on him during his sobriety fight. Now, the 10th of August was when the detox started. The 11th of August was just one day into it, and he experienced the issue outlined in the note. As muscle spasms and pain took hold, common sense doesn't tell you that the incident didn't occur on this date. How else did Depp know to even take a scalding shower in the first place? Even in the note, it states fiance was told to tell him to take a hot shower. How could this be an event that happened on this precise day, the first day of detox, when the 18th of August records, it records there was a fight with the fiance, which does seem to match up in regards to the account that Depp was providing. Furthermore, he was put to him an incident on the 17th of August 2014. This account, in my opinion, does not show abuse from Amber Heard, because I just think that she was ill prepared and she wasn't equipped with the right tools and skills to actually do this. This is something that me and the alcohol nurse were in agreement with. It's just not something that she was set out to do maliciously. And on top of that, I'm gonna bring in this audio.
Is it clarity? Is it less Adderall? I don't know. Is it work? Is it, something's affecting you, and I am not judging you. I'm not. In fact, you have elucidated my opinion on medication. Do I not give you your meds every day? Do I not remind you to take them? Do I not? know that you have to take medication. I am very aware of that. And you have actually changed my mind a bit as to how necessary they can be. I used to kind of think that they were not superfluous, but I don't know, just like
An escape.
yeah, and now I don't think that, and that's because of you. You know, you changed my opinion about that, but I do know you.
As you can hear, she believed that he was using these meds as a form of escapism. You wouldn't withhold meds if you really believe that they really needed it. Otherwise, you are a cold person, a cold shrew. If I'm just gonna be blunt, you would be that. However, based on the entire event, I just didn't think that she envisioned that being the case, and that incident completely changed her life. I didn't give the alcohol nurse that broke this down to me his medication, anything like that, so that I can get the most general and basic understanding of how this whole process actually works. It was threads like this and countless others that had created such a discourse around this case in regards to alcohol abuse, in regards to addiction. People just have the hunch that they know something and they don't do their due diligence to make sure that they're not causing more and more stigmas on sufferers. That anyway, 19th of August of 2014, Depp messages Paige saying, "I could not have made it without her. I would have gone for a swim and swallowed a big drink of the ocean. To be honest, it was hell of my own doing. But your little girl walked through with me step by step. I know you are already proud of her, but if you've seen her in action, amazing. It was an exercise of monumental patience and instinct. I would not be alive, sweetheart. There were more than a few times when I thought it would be more simple to take that route. It was Amber and Amber only who got me through it." On the 21st of August 2014, JD wanted to fire everyone. Kipper was saying, "Stop firing me." JD said, "Okay." On the 20th of August 2014, a day prior, it shows Depp letting Amber Heard know why he has to be alone after they had gotten back from the island. As recorded that this was 19th of August 2019. The incidents happened on the 18th of August according to the notes. The next day they were already on their way off the island, and then the next day Depp had said, "Hey, it's time for you to go. I need to do this by myself." Just like he said. The same day those texts were sent at 5:49 p.m. Nurse Debbie Lloyd's records at 12:30. It was noted that Depp expressed frustration with the detox process, and was noted after he had processed his feelings, he realized how far he had come and said he partly wanted to give up due to tensions between him and his fiancée. But one thing you must understand, in this incident, Depp did not say that Amber had hit him. Depp did not say that Amber had done anything. It's just she wouldn't give him the meds that he was asking for, and come to your own conclusion. But the point remains, this was not an incident in which Depp made up. That would be completely absurd. I believe she just felt embarrassed of this event and said that Depp was abusing her, because that's how she is, in my honest opinion. Because the evidence here could not be even more clear on why this event occurred the way it did. And when you see people making these threads to try and absolve her from an incident that was just likely her lack of knowledge, ignorance you might call it, being unawares, it leaves a poor taste in my mouth. And I had to just sidebar for a second and just go through that timeline, because that thread really got to me. Anyways, their relationship really deteriorated from after this incident, and they continue to have a fractured relationships with a few moments of serendipity. It must be noted that there was no incidents alleged until the Tokyo incidents, but I will go through the timeline really quickly. 24th of August 2014, he confirms that he got rid of Amber and calls her an ego squawk, and he went to the Sunset Boulevard and shot up some Negroes in a club. The Kipper doesn't remember this text happening. Despite Amber Heard claiming Depp having mania and hallucinations, a professional doctor, Dr. Kipper, did not concur with this, nor was he ever told that he was having mania and hallucinations. Amber Heard had told Kipper that Depp would explode on her. 27th of August 2014, nurse Erin Borum, now Erin Folati, hired to provide private nursing care for Amber Heard. What could be the reason for this? Beats me. Likely the detox is now over and he's traveling to London with Amber Heard. 29th of August 2014, Erin, Debbie and Amber Heard went out to dinner and recorded to have had 2 to 3 glasses of red wine. She was educated in regarding to alcohol intake, but she stated that she understood and continues to consume the wine anyway. Amber Heard vocalized that she feels like Depp would like her to decrease or eliminate her acting career and stay at home. Erin had encouraged her to discuss her feelings with Dr. Colonel Cowan, who became her therapist on the 24th of August 2014. 30th of August 2014, again, it is hard to make out the note in regarding to this conversation with Cowan and Amber Heard, but it was about Depp and his career. She mentions that Depp and his problem regarding romantic scenes was noted. Says that everyone around him seems intimidated by his power and money, and no one says anything to him. This is almost a similar account to what she told to Bonnie Jacobs. 3rd of September 2014, Cowan notes that the relationship is conflict-free, says that she dropped out or she has been taking or enrolled to doing online courses recently, history and something in the Greek alphabet. I do apologize, I am suffering from reading all of this. Cowan notes that she compares her career to Depp's career, and upon looking at this deposition, the narcissism was actually of the opinion of Cowan, and he went on to clarify that he did not diagnose Depp as narcissistic, and unless a wrong date has been mentioned, Cowan notes that Depp was jealous of Amber Heard's career and noted for 13th of August 2014. However, Cowan began seeing Amber Heard until the 26th of August 2014. My mistake on what I said earlier. Cowan believed Amber Heard had bipolar 2, otherwise she would not have been on the type of medication that she was on. Cowan admits that people would not tell the therapist the whole story. I must note here that unlike Bonnie Jacobs, she doesn't report any abuse to Cowan until December 2015. Cowan also never heard from Amber Heard that Depp pushed, kicked, etc. on the island. He also noted that he did not feel that Amber Heard was feeling unsafe. This was while he was asserting the possibility of a victim to stay with an abuser. It was also noted there was a possible issue with Amber Heard and Lily Rose. Cowan doesn't remember why it was even recorded by him. He does, however, note that there was conflict between Depp's family and her, namely Chrissy Dembrowski, Depp's sister. He stated that it's likely rooted in jealousy, as Amber Heard felt like she was controlling Depp. Depp keeps the peace with her family and friends. She has a problem with his family. I don't know, man. I don't know, but I'm not an expert, so I can't comment on the dynamic that could be happening here. The highlighted material in the document he was reading from were not the originals, and testimony given until page 163 to 165. We are now moving to the month of September. 5th of September 2014, Cowan notes plans for proposed wedding day and question marks on prenup. Notes nothing planned or in place, and she is ambivalent about it. The talk of prenup was always around way before Australia. It actually began here on the 5th of September, probably even earlier. And to be quite fair, it was raised here by Amber Heard, and it's not noted here who suggested of a prenup, whether it was Depp or whether it was Amber Heard. He also notes that Amber Heard's mom, Paige Heard, wants to retire, and it was suggested to her that she should think about these financial commitments more clearly. Paige was 58 and it was a decision. This was cited as a source of anxiety. On the 7th of September 2014, Debbie noted that Depp was happy that the sobriety is going well, and also notes that Depp uses the term or the phrase blue mini beast to describe his drug and alcohol rather than monster by saying he's happy to have it off his back. 10th of September 2014 rolls by. Cowan notes that Depp reacted more positive on her taking this job than usual, and Amber Heard seems pleased and relieved. Also note of a conference call with Kipper, who notes that Amber had been bitchy at her, and JD is obviously comfortable and attached to Debbie. Amber may be jealous and threatened by their closeness. It is suggested that Debbie should not go to France with them and should let Amber Heard and Depp go alone. Note that Amber Heard could be more insecure than what she describes to him. Debbie witnesses an argument that started by Amber Heard, and Depp was the one that calmed her down. Nurse Erin documents that Amber Heard is anxious and agitated in the evening, drank several glasses of wine, was angry towards the friends and associates, blaming them for Depp's substance abuse. It must also be noted that the detox is over and the sobriety has begun, yet Amber Heard for some reason believes that the people there are yes men to his substance use. 11th of September 2014, Amber Heard expresses fears that Depp might relapse. Again, no reasons are given for these fears. They are well in the way to recovery and sobriety. 12th of September 2014, Depp expresses concern for Amber Heard's behavior and were having issues as it adds stress to his life. He was advised to work on himself, to also begin work with the psychiatrist, which turns out to be Alan Blaustein, who is going to come into the picture quite soon. Both Depp and Debbie agreed that it's best if Depp and Amber Heard go to the France without treatment team. It was revealed here that Amber Heard had her own treatment team. What for? Beats me. 18th of September 2014, Kipper had emailed Dr. Blaustein, he has not seen Depp yet, to inform him that Depp was doing remarkably well, and this was in regards to the treatment and progress he was making to Kipper's treatment for the detox. 19 to 20 of September 2014, Depp had an injury from a bad stunt and was sent to the clinic in London. 21st of September 2014, Erin reports of news breaking of her cell phone being hacked, and nudes were posted online, and was noted that she experienced a level of anxiety, and Kipper to increase the dosage of Neurontin from 100 milligrams to 400 milligrams, and 25 milligrams of Seroquel at bedtime, 200 milligrams of Neurontin during the daytime. It was noted that client took partial dose of the Seroquel that was administered. Put a pin on these medications that has been noted because it's going to come really important much later on. And JD also offered assistance, but as you may have guessed, it wasn't good enough. On the 22nd of September 2014, Depp reports that Amber Heard had claimed that she had a Nazi freakout and he needed some knockout yum yum. This was reported to Kipper. At 3:30, it was noted by Debbie Lloyd, I believe, that he was punching the whiteboard in the kitchen after a fight, which shows a pattern of choosing to assault objects rather than a person. Debbie Lloyd notes that Depp refused to go to bed because he didn't want Amber Heard to think he didn't care by falling asleep. 22nd, I'll be fair here and I'll comment a little bit. I do believe that this fight actually happened based on the context. I do think it actually happened in regards to the revenge porn that was actually happening at this time. It was industry wide, so it was a quite distressing moment, and this is how Amber Heard had reacted to that distressing moment. It's not to say that it's okay that she had the right reaction. It's just with the context, it seems far more likely that this was the case and she was reacting to this than what Depp did, and Depp was catching strays as a result. But I don't know. 26th of September 2014, Depp reports that he stayed up on the phone with Amber Heard. Oh, and also, if it's not apparent by now, Amber Heard and Depp are engaged at this point. It is well known, which is why you see fiance, etc. in the notes, because from August they were officially engaged. Anyway, Moving on, 29th of September 2014, reported to the nurse by security that Depp slept in the kitchen chair till 6 a.m. Let's sidebar for a second. Not only is he not detailed as drunk, high, this just appears to be who he is. This seems like the type of person that would just fall asleep anywhere. And I'm saying this in reference to the Bahamas pictures, in reference to when he said he was sleeping on the floor. 2nd of October 2014, entered Dr. Blaustein, Depp's psychologist. 7th of October 2014, Debbie Lloyd notes that Depp slept through the call with Amber Heard again. He's sleeping. And he's sober. Let's move on. He slept through the call with Amber Heard. And the reason why I know this is because you can hear sleeping as well in audios where we don't know whether there's been influence of alcohol or not. Regardless, here is kind of proof that he is sleeping through a call. To be quite fair though, this is 5 a.m. on a Saturday night, so there could be basis that he's just tired. 8th of October 2014, Erin noted that she had discussed the conflict with Amber Heard and understood how miscommunication affects Depp's feelings. Debbie Lloyd knows that there was an argument with Amber Heard and Depp is calm, says he was upset and would like to be alone. He also wants to sleep on the couch and did not sleep until Amber Heard fell asleep. There seems to be a parallel here, but again, I'm not an expert. On the 14th of October 2014, reported that Depp kicked the door on set and was verbally aggressive to another person for no apparent reason. 15th of October 2014, reported that Depp is having desires of escaping with drugs, was given positive reinforcement. 19th of October 2014, it was reported that Depp tells his sister and Debbie that Amber Heard and him argued the night previously. 21st of October 2014, Depp reports to Blaustein that Amber Heard was hitting him. He was encouraged to show vulnerability to her in the session. An additional phone call was had the same day, and his date and Amber's own instability, where rage was the topic. Blaustein recalls talking about raised voices, yelling, and throwing things. Blaustein noted also that he withdrew in these situations due to his past. This method protected his feelings. 22nd of October 2014, an emergency appointment was booked with a psychiatrist. 22nd of October 2014, noted that Depp did feel better after the conversation and expressed that he is in a no-win situation in regards to the situation with Amber Heard. Dinner plans were made with Amber Heard. However, he actually wants to stay at home as he feels exhausted, but he doesn't want to upset Amber Heard. 23rd of October 2014, Depp expresses that he feels that Amber Heard uses the term mania to explain his behavior and excuse herself from any fault during arguments. Stress about current state of relationship. As you can see, this is strong basis that this mania idea began with Amber Heard, and believed he had mania and manic episodes and was spreading it whenever she could. And this was the first time Depp was actually privy to it, and he's now raising it up when he was privy to it. 24th of October 2014, Depp noted to have taken care of fiance. 25th of October 2014, reported that Depp had a rough morning with Amber Heard and would like to process. Plan to keep the peace with Amber Heard so that they can speak to therapists. Depp has attended all 3 of the weekly sessions available so far. 26th of October 2014, reported that he and Amber Heard expressed their true feelings and felt lighter. 27th of October 2014, Depp reports more old relationship issues. He reports that he was accused of being manic. This is the second time. 29th of October 2014, first time Depp and Blaustein had a face-to-face session. They mainly discussed his family and childhood, issues with mom and the other psychotic sister, father being an alcoholic, and his mother being abusive. He was deemed to be clear of all drugs except for THC, which is marijuana. 4th of November 2014, it is believed that Amber Heard was up to no good and said nothing to him the previous night because her love isn't genuine. 5th of November 2014, Depp noted to be concerned that Amber Heard is not responding to his texts all day, making him angry, and felt like she is doing this on purpose to upset him. Debbie encouraged to speak with Amber Heard and therapists about this. Again, with the context of the text message by Amber Heard, this note is very revealing into the reasons as to why Depp even feels like this. The 6th of November 2014, Depp reported that he had come in to discuss strategies for breaking up the relationship. Depp had also told Blaustein that Amber Heard was lying to him. 6th of November 2014, Amber Heard states that she started arguing with JD when she arrived home. Nothing here to say what about, noted as anxious and withdrawn. 7th of November 2014, Cowan Exhibit 10. Amber Heard messages Cowan saying that Johnny broke up with her, says that he's manic, claims he is high and probably drinking. Amber Heard messages Cowan asking if they could go in and see him in the next day as a couple. 8th of November arrives, message from Amber to Cowan saying that things are better with her and JD, and he wants to come and see him, but are exhausted because of the marathon of breaking up. Cowan also messages Amber Heard, says that there's a lot of hurt and distrust from both, and reassures that she wasn't the cause or the provocateur in the recent meeting that they had in which Depp had walked out. He also notes that Depp is hurt and needs to find his own ways to heal, and Amber Heard also was given reason, but Amber Heard rebuts to all of this by saying that the reason why he's acting like that is because he's a child and has little foresight, and he often gets angry. 10th of November 2014, Depp in for session and reports on relationship and core issues of trust, that the meeting with her therapist was fruitless. Depp expresses confusion on wanting to fix the relationship or help getting out of it. So at this point, just for full context, he is in pure confusion, and we could only wonder why he's in confusion of whether to end the relationship or to continue and try and fix the relationship. 11th of November 2014, defendants 3 or 4. Again, this was Amber Heard's exhibit, and it basically notes that Depp is feeling insecure of Amber Heard staying out too late at a beach party till 5 a.m. Questions if he's being jealous by writing this message. This is very absurd because when you just look at the context, it kind of makes sense. The fact that he's also thinking of breaking up with her, this text makes perfect sense. Why she's even using this as proof of control or anything whatsoever, to be quite frank, doesn't make sense. He also went to see Dr. Blaustein later and discussed the relationship, expressing he wants out, needs to access the exit door to know what he truly wants. November, Amber Heard verbalizes that she is anxious and fears of abandonment, that there is uncertainty of relationship status, and confused about cause of argument with fiance. On the 11th of November 2014, he knows that Depp had left the joint session. Cowan yet to hear from him. Amber is also terrified during these moments that she will lose the relationship. Her strategy is to call and ask that he come back. Cowan encourages her to let him process all of this. 13th of November 2014, only noted that Amber Heard was crying in distress, irritable, fatigued, etc. 14th of November 2014, Dr. Kipper sends plea to Depp, encouraging him not to give up as he is too gifted to let his hard work be for nothing, essentially. 14th of November 2014, Depp communicates to Whitney about Amber Heard was forwarded to Cowan by Amber Heard. 16th of November 2014, Amber Heard expresses confusion about relationship with fiancé. 17th of November 2014, it's reported that Depp sends message to Kipper saying him and the team should run to the hills, and goes on to say that he went to see Amber Heard downtown. Debbie notes that he spent time with Amber Heard and are working things out. Previously was having issues. 20th of November 2014 notes that communications with Amber Heard are improving and are starting to work things out. 20th of November also notes that Amber Heard continues to interact with JD. It has taken 2 months to basically reach to a point that they're finally communicating on some level. 23rd of November 2014, as a result of not taking meds, Depp states that he has been sleeping well, and him and Amber Heard are in a good place emotionally. He was strongly advised to continue on to the course of medication. 24th of November 2014, session with Dr. Blaustein resulted as follows. Depp reports that the relationship seems to be stabilizing, and both Blaustein and Depp looked at the jealous parts of himself, things that makes him jealous and what roles he plays in the jealousy. Triggering point was suspected to be when he was 22, as an actress had cheated on him with a leading man. If this was when he was 22, this could be Sherilyn Fenn, as they did date in 1985 for 3 years. 23rd of November 2014, Amber Heard and Depp reconciled, and Amber Heard is happy and content with the relationship. 4th of December 2014, where Depp reports that relationship is stabilizing. Note, using adults to attend to a jealous angered child, which Blaustein explains was him explaining to Depp that he's using his adult self to some of his angry, jealous feelings he has as a child. This could also go into the observation that I made earlier in regards to the monster reference, that he sees the monster in this case as a child, the monster child. He's putting the monster child away. This could very well be the context to why he thinks like that. And again, must know that all through that period from August onto December, not what reference to the monster by Amber Heard, by anyone around him. 8th of December 2014, it is noted that Amber Heard and Depp had a horrible fight and was up all night. 8th of December, it is also noted that Amber Heard had reported moderate anxiety throughout the day as a result from an argument the previous day. Only slept for 3 hours. 9th of December 2014, well rested for 8 hours and was able to process her arguments from a few nights prior. 10th of December 2014, Depp went for an individual session. Reports on the fight with Amber Heard believed to be on Sunday night. This was the 7th of December 2014. I certainly have zero confirmation of this, but perhaps this was the genesis of the fight. It was Depp spending 25,000 sterling on a naked picture of. Moving on, it was also noticed that Depp's role in the relationship is primitive and seems to rely on makeup sex and advised to have a safe escape. Blaustein expanded that what he meant by makeup sex was that the issues were resolved really by working things out, but rather by having sex. So at least we know why the relationship has been going on for this long, despite all of the many calls from Depp to end it since May 2014 it's been recorded till now. He was still confused. I'm sorry, but this is just a guy thing. This is such a guy thing that this happens very, very often. I don't know, man. 18th of December 2014, it reports a big fight with Amber Heard yesterday, which is the 17th of December. Depp reports either him or they as a couple are struggling with how to separate. Was advised that he should let her tell him her feelings, as the relationship needs to take care of you. This is why we hear Depp in the audios giving us so much time and space to talk. They note also says that Blaustein communicated to Depp that she or both of them needs to go to a safe zone to withdraw from one another. It also notes down that this is different from his childhood experiences, that this relationship is completely different from his childhood experiences. And moving on, 19th of December 2014, Amber began to share more to Cowan about her life and revealed that she is protective of her mother and her father is a volatile alcoholic. Revealed that both mother and father has a history of drug abuse, so it's not just one of them, both of them actually have an history of doing this. And reveals that Amber Heard contributes monthly towards supporting her mom and has an older sister, half sister, that has no relationship with the father. 23rd of December 2014, session with Depp notes that he is continuing sobriety given self-care techniques instead of using whilst working?
There wasn't a lot of discovery to the evidence that she presented. It was her word, and that's what happened. Then Johnny Depp had evidence that was not allowed, like the police were discounted because they didn't spend enough time, or his photographs, or the recordings of Amber admitting to abusing him. All of those things were also not allowed on his side. So I feel like there wasn't, in my opinion, a fully analyzed process of the evidence on either side, on that side for her words. And then, of course, she was a witness. It was the son.
Yeah.
Working in a paper in the U.S., what we do is, if we can vet our source well enough, that's it.
Anyway, so looking again at the Heard and Depp case,
yeah,
I think it is fair to say that Amber Heard never dreamt that she would be called to account on a defamation basis for the statements that she published under her name in the Washington Post.
Yeah.
We all know of somebody who's been in a divorce or been in a marriage where it hasn't been great and both parties were shitty to each other, and it occurs. I mean, look, you put two people under a house living together with stress and all sorts of other things, and it can get bad both ways. I mean, rarely is one party the angel and the other is the demon. It's not always. I mean, that happens, but there are cases where unfortunately both parties are in a very toxic relationship where they're hurting each other, whether it is emotionally, psychologically, or a combination with violence, and it happens. I mean, it is not rare. Unfortunately, it exists, and it's, again, part of our society. It's how we are as human beings, and it just happens.